People are finally saying it out loud, and that's what's making everyone uncomfortable. Because the moment you declare that Trevor Lawrence is playing the best football of his career and that the Jacksonville Jaguars are no longer a cute story, but a legitimate Super Bowl threat, you're challenging years of built-in skepticism, lazy labels, and the quiet assumption that Jacksonville is supposed to stay small, irrelevant, and harmless. This isn't hype born from one flashy afternoon. This is the culmination of weeks where defenses have been exposed, narratives have been flipped, and a quarterback once questioned for inconsistency has suddenly become the most decisive, confident, and ruthless version of himself. And that's why this conversation has exploded. Because when Dan calmly breaks down how Lawrence is carving teams apart with surgical precision, leveraging play action, motion, trust, and timing, it doesn't sound like a hot take. It sounds like a diagnosis. The league hates when uncomfortable truths arrive quietly, because it leaves no easy way to dismiss them. And right now, the truth is that Trevor Lawrence isn't surviving anymore. He's dictating, and the Jaguars aren't sneaking up on anyone. They're announcing themselves. This is where the tension lives, because once you admit that this version of Jacksonville is real, you also have to admit that a lot of teams have been lying to themselves about who they're actually dealing with. This isn't about 1-5 touchdown game. It's about a quarterback who suddenly understands exactly what he's seeing, trusts what he's throwing, and believes in what's being called. And when that clicks in the NFL, everything changes fast. That's why people are uneasy. Because the Jaguars weren't supposed to be here yet, and Trevor Lawrence wasn't supposed to look this comfortable, this lethal, this sure of himself. And yet, here we are. The discussion centers on Jacksonville's surge since their bye in Week 8, a stretch where they've gone 6-1, while Lawrence has piled up 18 touchdowns, seen his QBR spike dramatically, and just delivered the most dominant performance of his career in a win over the Jets, throwing for a career-high 5 touchdowns and adding another on the ground, becoming the first player in franchise history to account for 6 touchdowns in a single game. That's not a footnote. That's a statement, and it's why this breakdown has caught fire. Dan was asked directly how Lawrence has been able to run this offense so effectively lately, and his answer wasn't about magic or momentum. It was about structure, coaching, and trust, specifically pointing to Liam Cohen and Grant Udinski, and the way this offense is built on double motions, Rams-influenced concepts, and relentless play action that forces defenders into impossible decisions. What Dan explained wasn't fluff. It was a masterclass in why this offense is suddenly humming. He walked through how double motion isn't just window dressing, it's manipulation, pulling defenders across the formation, resetting leverage, and creating uncertainty before the snap. When Jakobi Meyers motions across, resets, then inserts between the tackle and tight end, it's not chaos, it's choreography, and Lawrence understands exactly what it's designed to reveal. Dan broke down how these concepts create alerts against man coverage, how the backside defender becomes the key read, and how play action forces that defender to commit, opening vacated space for routes like Brian Thomas Jr.'s clear out or through route. This isn't Lawrence guessing anymore. This is Lawrence anticipating, flattening routes, and getting the ball out on time because he knows what the defense has been forced into. Dan emphasized that whether they're under center or in the pistol, the concepts remain consistent and that consistency breeds confidence. Lawrence isn't processing from scratch, he's confirming what he already expects to see. That's the leap. The trust shows up in throws that don't look wide open to the casual viewer, but are delivered on time anyway, because Lawrence believes his receivers will be where they're supposed to be. Jakobi Meyers taking contact on a dig route and holding onto the football isn't just a completion. It's proof of why this offense works, because drops are down, timing is up, and belief is everywhere. Dan made it clear that the middle of the field, once a shaky area for Lawrence, is now being attacked with purpose, not recklessness. Brian Thomas Jr. might not have been the middle of the field answer in that particular game, but the offense adapted, and that adaptability is the mark of something serious. When Dan talked about Liam Cohen's sequencing, That's where the conversation shifted from impressive to dangerous. He highlighted a simple inside zone run with a full-back lead that gained just 2 yards. Nothing special, except it wasn't nothing. It was a setup. The very next drive, same look, same personnel, same alignment. Except this time the defense bites hard. Strange leaks through the B-gap, and suddenly it's a huge gain. That's not coincidence, that's planning, and Lawrence is executing it with total conviction. This is what separates a functioning offense from a threatening one. Lawrence isn't just reacting to what's open, he's trusting that what's called will work, and that trust allows him to cut it loose. Dan tied it directly to the Shanahan and McVay influence, where quarterbacks are taught that someone will be open if the concept is run correctly, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Lawrence is no longer hesitant, no longer double-clutching, no longer bailing early. He's decisive because the offense gives him answers, and because his receivers are catching the football. When Dan said this offense is legit and that Lawrence is as hot as anybody, that wasn't exaggeration, it was observation. The Jaguars aren't relying on running the ball dominantly to sell play action. They're using motion, sequencing, and defensive tendencies to create it anyway, and defenses are struggling to keep up. That's why the Super Bowl conversation, as uncomfortable as it makes people, isn't absurd. This isn't about crowning anyone prematurely. It's about acknowledging trajectory. Lawrence's confidence is contagious. It changes how the locker room feels, how the play caller operates, and how opponents prepare. You can't sit on roots anymore because the play action will punish you. You can't overcommit because the sequencing will get you later. You can't assume Lawrence won't throw into tight windows because he's proven he will, and that his receivers will reward him for it. That's the shift. And when you zoom out, it's not just about Lawrence, it's about identity. Jacksonville knows who they are right now. They're not improvising, they're imposing. And that's why this conversation resonates, because teams that figure that out late in the season are the ones nobody wants to see. Dan didn't need to shout about Super Bowls. The film did that for him. The calm confidence in his breakdown is what makes it provocative, because it leaves no room for dismissal. This isn't a fluke driven by broken coverage or lucky bounces. It's repeatable, teachable, and sustainable football. Trevor Lawrence isn't freelancing. He's operating within a system that amplifies his strengths and minimizes hesitation. And that's when quarterbacks become dangerous. That's when franchises change tiers. The Jaguars are no longer waiting for Lawrence to arrive. He's here, and the league has to deal with what that means. The question now isn't whether this version of Jacksonville is real. It's how long it took everyone else to admit it. Because when a quarterback trusts his eyes, trusts his play caller, and trusts his teammates, the ceiling stops being theoretical.